The night the infection reached our town, my little brother locked me and my 9-year-old daughter out of the house we grew up in. I stood on the porch with her hand in mine, and I heard the deadbolt turn, then the chain, and I could not, for the life of me, understand why the softest man I've ever known was shutting a scared child out into the dark. My name is Emerson Vale. I fix heating systems for a living, which means I spend my days thinking about how a building breathes and where the pressure builds and where a sealed room turns on you. None of that training prepared me for what I heard my brother say through that locked door. 3 words that explained everything and changed nothing about how impossible the next 7 hours would be, because there were things waking up in my driveway. There was a 15-year-old boy standing in my dead wife's flower bed, watching the house with too much patience. And there was a window in the cold hour before dawn, one narrow window that my brother spent the last clear minutes of his life mapping out for us from the wrong side of that door. I still don't know if he saved us or broke something in me that never grew back. I've had 11 months to decide, and I can't. So let me take you back to that Thursday in July, and I'll tell you exactly how it happened. And you can decide for yourself what you would have done. The deadbolt turned from the inside, and I heard it. That small metal sound, the one I'd heard 10,000 times in my life, the one that used to mean I was home, except I was standing on the wrong side of it, in the dark, with my daughter's hand in mine, and something moving 3 streets over that didn't walk like a person anymore. I put my palm flat on the door, still warm from the day's sun. "Dominic," I said, not loud. You didn't get loud that night, not if you'd been paying attention to the way sound traveled once the streetlights started going out. "Dom, open the door." Nothing. Then the chain. I heard the chain slide into its track. My little brother, 31 years old, was locking me out of the house we grew up in. Behind me, Renata whispered, "Dad, why is Uncle Dom doing that?" I didn't answer, because the honest answer was that I didn't know. And the lie would have required a steadier voice than I had. I just squeezed her hand and looked back down the driveway at the street where 3 of our neighbors were standing in the wrong way, heads tilted, too still. And I understood we had maybe 90 seconds before the choice stopped being mine at all. Let me back up. Because if I just tell you he locked us out, you'll hate him, and it's more complicated than that. And by the end, I need you to understand exactly how much more complicated and what it cost, and why I still can't decide if he saved us or broke something in me that never grew back. My name is Emerson Vale, 46 that summer. I fixed heating and cooling systems for a living, which sounds like nothing until you understand that it made me a man who thinks about airflow, about how a building breathes, about where the pressure builds and where it escapes. That mattered later. Everything I noticed early, I noticed because of vents and returns and the way a sealed room turns on you. We lived in Harlan Creek, a town of maybe 11,000 people in the crook of a river valley. The kind of place where the same 4 last names show up on the fire department and the church softball roster and the headstones. My wife Talia had died 2 years before. Cancer, the slow, ugly kind, the kind that gives you time to say everything and still leaves you feeling like you forgot the important part. After that, it was me and Renata, 9 years old, sharp as a tack, allergic to bees and to being told what to do. And Dominic. My brother had moved back in with our late father's house 3 doors down when Talia got sick to help. And after she passed, he sort of stayed helping, which is to say he was there for the school pickups and the bad nights. Dom was the soft one. I was the practical one. Our whole lives, that was the deal. I built things, and he felt things. He cried at commercials. He couldn't put down a stray dog to save his own hand. When our father died, I made the arrangements, and Dom sat in the garage for 2 days holding Dad's old work gloves. So no, my brother was not the kind of man who locks a 9-year-old out in the dark. That's the part I need you to hold on to. Whatever he did that night, he did it as the soft one, not the cold one. That's what made it unbearable. The infection, or the outbreak, or whatever you want to call it, reached Harlan Creek on a Thursday in late July. And it reached us slower than the news made it sound, because we were small and the roads in were bad. For a week, we'd watched it on our phones, like it was weather in another country. Cities, highways clogged. That flat, official language they use when they've already lost control. Please shelter in place. Conserve resources. Avoid contact with affected individuals. Affected, like a bad reaction to shellfish. Renata had been having nightmares, not about monsters, about the emergency alert sound, that grinding electronic bray they push through every phone at once. She'd started sleeping with her tablet turned off and stuffed in a drawer. And I let her, because I understood. That sound had become the sound of the adults not being in charge anymore. Here's the small thing. The thing I need you to remember. Talia, before she died, had this habit. Every night, she'd walk the house and touch the door handles. Front, back, garage, the sliding door to the deck. She said it was so she could sleep, knowing the house was sealed. After she died, I caught myself doing it. Renata caught me once and asked what I was doing, and I said, checking the locks. And she said, like Mom. And after that, she did it too. Our little ritual. Every night, one of us walked the house and touched the handles and said San Juan sealed. And the other one said sealed back. That's the detail. Hold it. The Thursday it came, I was at the Petrosky place across town, replacing a blower motor. Because even at the end of the world, someone's got a house that won't cool, and a wife who won't tolerate it. My phone went off around 4. Not the emergency bray. A text from Renata's school. Early dismissal. Come now if you can. Then, 20 minutes later, a second text that just said the buses were not running and parents needed to collect their children. I left the blower motor in pieces on the Petrosky's floor. I remember Carol Petrosky following me out onto the porch, asking if I was coming back to finish. And I remember thinking that was the most normal sentence I would hear for a long time. The school was chaos in the way that scared me more than screaming would have. Which is to say, it was quiet chaos. Teachers with tight faces moving kids in lines. One administrator standing at the front doors with her arms out like she was directing traffic in a hurricane. I found Renata in the gym with her class, sitting cross-legged, her backpack already on, because of course she'd packed herself. She saw me and didn't run. She just stood up, walked over, and took my hand. And that steadiness in her scared me too, because it meant she'd decided the adults weren't reliable, and she was managing her own extraction. In the truck, she asked, "Is it here now?" "I don't know yet," I said. "We're going to get Uncle Dom, and then we're going to figure it out." She nodded like that was a reasonable plan, which it was, right up until it wasn't. The drive home should have been 8 minutes. It took 40. Not because of the infected. I didn't see a single one on the way. But because of people. The little four-way by the grocery had turned into a knot of cars, all trying to leave town at once, and nobody was leaving. They were just idling and honking and rolling down windows to yell things they didn't know. I took the long way, up behind the reservoir, past the water treatment plant. And that's where I saw the first real sign that this was different. The gate to the treatment plant was open. That gate is never open. I've done work out there. The town keeps it locked with a code because there's chemistry inside that can hurt you. And it was standing wide open with a county truck slewed sideways across the entrance and both doors hanging. Nobody around, just the low hum of the aerators still running, doing their job in an empty yard. And something about that hum, that mindless competence of a machine still working while the people were gone, put a cold weight in my chest that didn't leave for days. I didn't stop. I want to be honest about that. There might have been someone in that truck who needed help. And I looked at my daughter in the passenger seat, and I drove past. You'll have moments like that in this story where I made a call, and I'll tell you the call, and I won't dress it up. We got to our street a little after 6. Golden light, long shadows, the sprinklers coming on at the halorins like it was any evening in July. And Dominic's car was in my driveway, not his, which meant he'd come to my house looking for us, which meant good. He was thinking the same thing I was. We'd hunker down together. I pulled in behind his car. The front door of my house was closed. I noticed that because Dom never closed it in summer, he liked the screen and the cross breeze. Renata was already unbuckling. "Wait," I said. I don't know why I said it. Something about the closed door. But she was 9, and she'd been holding it together all day, and she was 30 feet from home. So she was out of the truck before I could stop her, jogging up the walk, calling Uncle Dom in that bright voice kids use. And I was 3 steps behind her when I heard, from inside, my brother's voice say one word. No. Not to her. I could tell it wasn't to her. It was the flat, hollow no of a man saying it to himself, arguing with himself. And then I heard him moving fast, and then Renata reached the door and pulled the handle, and it didn't open. And she looked back at me confused. And that's the moment the deadbolt turned. I've replayed the next 10 minutes more times than any other 10 minutes of my life. I got up onto the porch and I knocked, calm, because Renata was watching my face. "Dom, hey, it's us. Open up." His voice came through the door, low and close, like he had his forehead against it. Emerson, you can't come in." "What are you talking about? Open the door." "You can't come in the house." A breath. I got bit. The word went through me like cold water through a pipe. I looked down at Renata. She hadn't understood, or she had, and was pretending she hadn't, watching my face for the instruction on how to feel. "When?" I said. Because that was the HVAC part of my brain taking over, the diagnostic part, the part that needs numbers. When, where, how bad, what's the pressure in the system? Couple hours ago, I went to check on Dad's house, and the merchant boy was in the yard, and he wasn't right. And I tried to get him inside because I thought he was hurt, and he... Dom's voice cracked and reset. "It's my forearm. It's not bad. It's not deep. But I've been watching myself. I've been sitting here watching my own hand, and I can feel it. I can feel something. My arm's cold up to the elbow, and it's climbing. Then you come out here, and I take care of you." My voice didn't shake. I made sure of that. "We don't leave you in there alone. That's exactly what you do." He almost laughed. "You've got her. You think I'm going to open this door with her standing right there? You think I don't know what I'm turning into?" Renata pressed against my side. "Uncle Dom, I don't understand." Silence from inside. Then, gently, in the voice he used to read her bedtime stories, he said, "Hey, Nettie. Hey, I need you to be my brave girl right now, okay? I need you to stay with your dad and do everything he says." "Open the door," she said, and her voice finally broke, and that broke something in the house too, because I heard my brother make a sound I'd never heard him make, a sound like a man stepping off a ledge on purpose. That's when I looked back at the street. 3 of them. the halogen sprinkler still ticking away, throwing arcs of water, and standing in that spray were three figures I half recognized. Del Okafor from 2 doors down, who coached the middle school wrestling team. His wife. And someone smaller I didn't let myself look at directly. They weren't coming toward us, not yet. They were doing that thing, that terrible listening thing. Heads tilted, turning slowly toward the sound of a little girl crying on a porch. 90 seconds. That's what I gave us. "Dom," I said, fast and low now. "I hear you, okay? I hear you. But I need in the garage, not the house. The garage. I need my tools, and I need the truck keys off the hook, and I need to get her somewhere with a door I control. You give me the garage, and you stay in the house, and we figure out the rest through the wall. Deal?" A long pause. In that pause, I watched Del Okafor take one step off the Halloran's lawn onto the sidewalk. "The garage," Dom said. "The inside door's locked. I'll leave it. M." His voice dropped so low I almost missed it. "Don't let her see me. Whatever happens, don't let her see what I turn into. Promise me that, and I'll believe you're really my brother." "I promise," I said. And I meant it. And keeping that promise turned out to be the hardest thing I have ever done. The garage side door was around the corner of the house, and it was, thank God, unlocked, because Dom had run through it when he came looking for us. I got Renata inside, and I pulled it shut, and I threw the bolt. And then I stood in the dark of my own garage, with my heart doing something arrhythmic. And my daughter's fingers dug into my forearm, and I made myself count the things I knew. I knew the garage. I knew every inch of it. My workbench, my tools, the chest freezer, the shelving. I knew the big roll-up door faced the driveway and was down, and I was not going to open it. I knew the interior door to the house was on the far wall, and behind it, somewhere, my brother was sitting alone with a bite on his arm, and a cold that was climbing. And I knew, from the sound starting up outside, that Del Okafor had reached my truck. If you've never heard a person who isn't a person anymore investigate a vehicle, I hope you never do. It's the wrongness of the rhythm. A curious animal explores. This was something in between exploration and hunger, hands dragging along metal, a low sound that wasn't language, but wanted to be. I pulled Renata down behind the workbench and put my finger to my lips, and she nodded, tears running silent down her face. And we listened to the thing outside decide whether we were worth its attention. The truck, the keys, the plan I'd said out loud to Dom. All of it required going back outside, and going back outside was now off the table because there were 3 of them in my driveway, and one of them was breathing against the crack of the roll-up door. I want to tell you I had a brilliant idea. What I had was a house I understood better than the things trying to get into it. I leaned close to Renata's ear. "We're going to go inside," I breathed. "Through the house door. Very quiet. We're going upstairs, and we're going to the one room with a lock and a window over the porch roof. Can you do that?" She looked at the interior door. She knew what was behind it. She knew who was behind it. And she was 9 years old, and she looked back at me and mouthed, "Sealed. Our ritual, our word." She was telling me she trusted the plan, the way we trusted the locks at night. I have never been prouder of a human being and never wanted less to deserve it. I went to the interior door. I put my ear to it. Nothing. I turned the handle by degrees, the way you learn to do when you don't want a mechanism to click. And I eased it open 2 inches into my own kitchen, and the smell hit me. Not rot. Not yet. Something sourer, chemical, like a battery that's been cooking. And under it, my brother's voice, from the living room, very quiet, very calm. "I told you not to come in the house." He was sitting in the recliner, our father's old recliner, the one Dom had never let me throw out. He had a kitchen towel wrapped around his left forearm, and he was holding his left wrist with his right hand. Hard, like he was trying to keep the arm from doing something on its own. In the last of the daylight through the window, I could see his face. And it was still his face. Still my little brother's face. But the sweat on it was wrong. Too much, sheeting off him. And his eyes had a shine to them that made my stomach drop. "They're in the driveway," I whispered. "All the way in. I can't get to the truck. I need to get her upstairs." Dom's eyes moved to Renata, and something crossed his face, and he turned his head away from her, deliberately, so she was looking at the side of his face and not the front. Even now, even like this, he was managing what she saw. "Go up the back stairs," he said, "not the front. The front stairs are by the window, and they'll see the movement through the glass." He swallowed. "The merchant boy, the one that got me. He learned the house is worth watching. He's out front now, isn't he? In the flower bed." I hadn't seen that one, but I believed him. "Backstairs," I said. "Okay. He still wouldn't look at Renata. "Take my phone off the charger. I got through to Colby Reyes about an hour ago, before you came. He's holed up at the fire station on Route 9 with maybe a dozen people. Generator, food, it's brick, and it's got a fenced yard. He said if anybody could make it there, come. He said morning's better than night. He said the ones out now, they slow down when it gets cold, real cold before dawn." Dom's whole arm jerked once, and he clamped it down. "You hear me? Before dawn, when the temperature drops, that's your window." That was the first piece of the thing that would keep us alive. And it came from the brother who was already dying. Thinking about airflow and temperature the way I did. Except he was thinking about the temperature of his own blood. If a story like this is worth your time, stay with the channel. It matters more later than you'd think. Now, back to that night. I got Renata up the back stairs. Dom's phone was in my pocket. We didn't turn on any lights. We went into the only room upstairs with both a solid door and a bolt, which was my bedroom. The room I'd shared with Talia, and now shared with nobody. And I locked us in, and I moved the dresser in front of the door, slow, an inch at a time, lifting it so the legs didn't drag. Then I did the thing I'd been putting off. I went to the window that looked over the front porch roof, and I looked down. The merchant boy was in the flower bed, 15 maybe. He'd been in Renata's before-school program 2 years back. He was standing in Talia's dead hydrangeas, perfectly still, face turned up toward the house. And even in the dark, I could see that his eyes were open and fixed on nothing, and that he was patient in a way that no 15-year-old is ever patient. Del Okafor and his wife had drifted back toward the street, but the boy stayed, watching the house. Dom was right. It had learned. I sat down with my back against the bed, and I pulled Renata into my lap. And she finally let herself shake, the whole small frame of her. And I held on, and I looked at the dresser against the door, and I did the math I do for a living. Airflow. This house. If Dom turned downstairs, could he get up here? The back stairs door didn't lock. The front stairs were by the window. If he came up either way, this dresser and this bolt were what stood between my daughter and whatever my brother became. And I realized I could still hear him, through the floor, talking, low and steady. At first I thought he was talking to himself, and then I caught the rhythm and understood he was on the phone. I unlocked Dom's phone in my hand, and the last call log confirmed it. He'd called Colby Reyes back. He was down there in the dark with a climbing cold in his arm, arranging our rescue, using what was left of his time on us. I texted Colby from Dom's phone. "This is Emerson, Dom's brother. Got my daughter with me. Dom's bit. He can't come. We'll try to make the station before dawn. What's the safest route from Aspen Ridge?" The reply took 10 minutes, and when it came, it was 3 lines. "Stay off Route 9 itself. It's packed with cars in them. Cut through the greenway behind the school. It comes out 2 blocks from us. Dom knew about your girl's bees. We've got the epi kit here. Tell him." Then a minute later, "Tell Dom thank you. He's the reason half the people here got the warning." I looked at that last line for a long time. My brother, the soft one, the one who cried at commercials, had spent the afternoon that he got bitten calling everyone he could reach and telling them to get somewhere safe. That's why he'd gone to Dad's house. That's how the merchant boy got him. He'd been trying to bring a sick kid inside because he couldn't stand to leave anyone in the dark. Renata had fallen into the shallow half-sleep of an exhausted child. I eased her onto the bed, and I put my ear to the floor, and I listened to my brother breathe, and I made myself a plan I hated. We couldn't move until the cold hour before dawn. That was maybe 7 hours away. 7 hours in a locked room over a brother turning into something. With a 15-year-old sentinel in the flower bed, and God knew how many more in the streets between us and the greenway. 7 hours. And somewhere in those 7 hours, Dom was going to stop being Dom. Around 11, the talking downstairs stopped. I'd been dreading a scream or a crash. What I got was worse, which was silence, the specific silence of a conversation ending mid-sentence. I put my hand flat on the floor and I felt the house, the way I feel a system for the source of a fault. And I couldn't feel anything. And that absence sat me up straight in the dark. Then, from directly below, 3 slow knocks on the ceiling, which was to say, on the floor of my bedroom, from the living room. Knuckles, deliberate. Our father used to do that. Knock on the ceiling with a broom handle to call us down for dinner. Dom was telling me he was still Dom. I knocked back twice. Still here. The phone in my hand buzzed. A text from Dom's phone, which meant he'd taken his phone off the charger downstairs. Or, no, I had his phone. I looked at the screen, and it was a text from Dom's own number to itself. A draft? No. It was Dom texting from the landline. We still had a landline, Dad's old number. Dom paid for it out of sentiment. He'd texted the house phone's text-to-message thing. The message was, "Can't do stairs anymore. Left leg wrong. Good. Means it stays down here. Dresser holds." I texted back to the landline. "Dresser holds. Good. Listen. When you go out the porch roof window, not any door. Roof to the maple to the ground on the Kessler side. No street. The boy watches the doors, not the roof." He'd thought about our escape from inside his own transformation. He'd mapped it. My brother, who couldn't read a tape measure, was reading the geometry of the last thing he'd ever do for us. Then, one more thing, and then I'm going to stop texting because my hands. When you get to Colby, don't tell Nettie I was scared. Tell her I was watching a movie. Tell her I fell asleep. I typed and deleted 3 different answers. What I finally sent was, "I'll tell her you were the bravest one." There was a long pause. Then the landline sent back a single character, a period. And that was the last coherent thing my brother ever said to me. "Where are you listening from tonight? And would you have opened that door?" I've never once decided the right answer. Now let me tell you what came up the stairs. It wasn't fast. That's the mercy and the horror of it both. Whatever Dom had, It moved through him slow, and it left the man on top for longer than it had any right to. The first sound was the recliner, that specific creak of Dad's recliner giving up someone's weight. Then a long silence. Then a sound I will hear until I die, which was a body learning to move without a mind driving it. The arrhythmic drag and catch of a leg that didn't work, coming across the living room toward the back stairs. Not the front stairs by the window, the back stairs. He'd told me the boy watched the front, even mindless, even turned. The last route my brother's body knew was the one that kept us hidden. I don't know what that means. I've thought about it every day since. Maybe nothing. Maybe the paths we wear into ourselves outlast the self. Renata woke up. Of course she woke up. She sat up in the dark, and she heard it coming up the back stairs. The drag and catch, drag and catch. And she looked at me, and she didn't scream, my brave girl. She just pressed both hands over her own mouth and looked at me to be told it wasn't what it was. I couldn't tell her that, so I did the only thing left. I picked up the small Bluetooth speaker off Talaya's old nightstand, the one Renata used for her bedtime music, and I found the playlist, and I set the phone volume as low as it would go, and I put it in the far corner of the room, away from the door, and I played, very quietly, the song Dom used to sing to her. Some silly thing about a frog and a boat. I played it at a whisper, and Renata's face crumpled, and I put my mouth right against her ear. "He's not Uncle Dom anymore," I breathed. "The part that was Uncle Dom already left, and it went somewhere it doesn't hurt. What's on the stairs is just a body, like a shell. We don't hate the shell. We just don't let it near us, okay? We don't hate it." She nodded against my hand. I don't know if a 9-year-old can hold a thought that large. I don't know if a 46-year-old can. But I needed her to try, because the thing on the stairs reached the top. And it found the door, and it pushed. The dresser held. Of course it held. I'd loaded it right. But the pushing wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that after a minute of pushing, it stopped. And there was a pause. And then, against the door, low, a sound. A wordless, formless sound, rising and falling. And with the little frog song playing in the corner, I realized the sound at the door was following the melody, not words, not even really music, but the shape of it. The thing that had been my brother stood at the door in the dark, and had heard the song he used to sing, and something in the ruin of it tried to sing along. Renata heard it too. She looked at the door and then at me, and she whispered, so quietly, "He remembers." I turned the song off. I've never been able to explain why. I think I couldn't stand the possibility that any part of him was still in there, feeling this, pressed against a door he'd told me to lock. If he was gone, I could survive it. If he was partly there, listening to me choose the dresser over him, I couldn't. So I turned it off, and the sound at the door lost its shape. And slowly, over the next hour, it drifted back down the stairs, drag and catch, and settled somewhere below us and went quiet. That's the thing they don't tell you. The infection isn't the worst of it. The worst of it is the hour you spend deciding what to believe about the person on the other side of the door, because what you decide is the only thing that lets you do what you have to do. I checked the phone. 1:40 in the morning. Colby had texted twice, asking if we were alive. The cold hour, the one Dom had told me about, and Colby had confirmed. That window when the turned one slowed down before dawn, that was between 4 and 5:30 by everyone's account. 2.5 hours to wait. I used them. I emptied Renata's backpack of school things onto the bed, and I repacked it. 2 bottles of water from the bathroom tap while it still ran. A flashlight from Talia's drawer, the little one, red lens because red light doesn't carry. Renata's EpiPen, both of them, from the case I kept everywhere, because a B in July was still a B, even at the end of the world. Her tablet, off. My multi-tool, a length of paracord I'd used to tie a tomato cage and never put away. And, because I'm the man I am, I spent 20 minutes with the multi-tool, taking the screen off the porch roof window so it would lift silent when the time came. And I oiled the sash track with lip balm. And I tested the maple branch geometry with my eyes a dozen times, mapping the exact route Dom had given me, roof to maple to the Kessler side, no street. Every so often the thing below shifted. Drag, catch, then stillness. I kept one ear on it the whole time. Around 3, Renata whispered, "Dad, when we go, are we leaving him?" I'd known this was coming and I still wasn't ready. "Yeah," I said, "we're leaving him. In the house. In the house." She was quiet. Then, "Will he be lonely?" I have fixed 10,000 broken things. I did not know how to fix this. "No," I said. "The part of him that could be lonely already went. Remember? What's left doesn't feel that. That's the one good thing about it." I didn't know if it was true. I still don't. But she took it, and she lay down, and she said, "I want to say bye to him, through the floor, where he can hear the shape but not the words." And she leaned down and put her mouth near the floorboards, and she hummed, very softly, the frog song. Just the tune, just the shape. And from below, after a moment, the sound came back, formless, rising and falling, following her. My daughter said goodbye to my brother in a language neither of them had words for anymore. And I sat there, with my fist against my mouth, and I let them have it. Even though every survival instinct I had was screaming that we were painting a target on the floor. When she finished, she sat up and wiped her face and said, "Okay, now I can go." At 4:15, the world outside changed temperature. You could feel it even through the glass, that pre-dawn drop, the valley exhaling its cold down off the ridge. I looked out the porch window, and the merchant boy in the flower bed had gone slack, head drooping, still standing but gone loose, like a machine idling. Down the street I couldn't see the others at all. Dom had been right. The cold pulled them under, not asleep, but slow, dulled, like cold-blooded things in a cold season. "Now," I breathed. I went out the window first, onto the porch roof, low and slow, testing every shingle for the one that would announce us. Then I reached back, and Renata came into my arms, 49 pounds of held breath. And I set her on the roof beside me, and we crept to the edge where the old maple came close. The branch Dom meant was thick as my thigh, and I got Renata onto it. And she went along it like the squirrel she was. And I followed heavier and slower, and felt the whole tree take my weight with a groan I felt in my teeth. Below us, and 40 feet over, the merchant boy's head came up. Cold or not, the tree had spoken, and it had heard. It turned toward the maple. It took a step out of the flower bed. And I understood in one gut drop that the cold slowed them, but did not switch them off, and that we had a sentry between us and the ground, and that everything now depended on how fast a cold thing could move versus how fast a scared man could get his daughter down a tree. "Kessler side," I breathed. "Go, don't wait for me. Fence gap by the shed, go." She went. I dropped the last 8 feet and landed wrong, and felt my ankle do something I'd pay for later. And the merchant boy was coming around the front of the house now, sluggish but coming. And I did the only thing I could think of, which was the thing my brother would have hated and understood. I took Dom's phone out of my pocket, and I set the frog song playing at full volume, and I threw it as hard as I could over the roof, back toward the house, back toward the recliner and the man in it. And the phone landed somewhere on the far side, and the silly little song about a frog and a boat rang out into the dark from the wrong direction. The merchant boy stopped, turned toward the song, and so, from inside the house, did something else. I heard it, the drag and catch, moving now with purpose, toward the sound, toward the song it knew. Two of them, drawn to a frog in a boat, away from the Kessler side, away from us. I used my brother twice that night, once to plan the escape, once as bait without meaning to, because the song that was his was the loudest thing I had. I have to live with the second one. I went over the fence at the shed gap, and Renata was there in the dark on the Kessler side, crouched, waiting even though I'd told her not to, because she wasn't going to leave me either. We were both bad at that. It ran in the family. I grabbed her hand, and we ran. Low, along the back fence lines of Aspen Ridge, ankles screaming, toward the black mouth of the greenway behind the school. The greenway saved us and nearly killed us. It was a paved path along the creek, tree-canopied, no street lights, and in the pre-dawn cold, it was empty of the fast kind. But it was not empty. Twice we passed shapes standing in the trees, slack and idling. And both times we went by at a walk, not a run, because I'd figured out by then that motion and sound woke them. And stillness let you pass. And I made Renata match my pace with her hand crushing mine. And we walked past a woman I think was her third-grade teacher, close enough to touch, and neither of us breathed, and she never lifted her head. It took us 50 minutes to go 2 miles. The sky was going gray at the edges, when the greenway spat us out by the old mill, 2 blocks from the fire station. And that's where the cold hour ended. You could feel it turn, the gray light, the first real warmth of the sun coming up over the ridge, and all down the street the slack shapes began to lift their heads. Waking, speeding up. Colby had texted the door code, and I had it memorized, and I could see the station, its fenced yard, the American flag hanging limp. 200 yards down an open street that was filling with things that were waking up hungry. We run now, I told Renata. All the way, no matter what you hear behind you. You get to the gate and you punch 4911, and you get inside, even if I'm not next to you. Say it back. 4911, even if you're not next to me. Her chin came up. But you will be. We ran. God, we ran. And behind us the street came alive, and I heard them, and I did not look back. And Renata's little legs were pumping, and I had her hand, and my ankle was a bright bar of fire, and the gate was 100 yards, 50, and I could see faces at the station windows now. And someone was already at the gate on the inside. A big man in a fire coat, Colby, punching it open from within, yelling something I couldn't hear over my own blood. 20 yards. Something got close enough behind me that I felt the change in the air. I picked Renata clean up off the ground without breaking stride, and I threw her the last 10 feet through the gate into Colby's arms, and I came through behind her, and the gate slammed, and the lock threw, and a hand hit the chain link where my back had been. Then I was on the ground, inside the fence with my daughter's whole body against my chest, and a dozen strangers around us, and the sun coming up gold over Harlan Creek. And I lay there, and I breathed, and I did not let go of her. And Colby Reyes crouched down next to me and put his big hand on my shoulder and said, "Dom?" I shook my head. Colby closed his eyes. He was a fire captain. He'd knocked on a lot of doors in his life to tell people the thing I couldn't say. He just nodded and squeezed my shoulder and stood up to give us the one thing he could, which was to not make me say it out loud in front of my daughter. That was 11 months ago. The fire station held for 6 weeks. Then the well pump failed, and I fixed it twice, and the second time I couldn't. And we made the call to move the whole group north to the county fairgrounds, where the National Guard had set a perimeter. And that's a whole other story with its own graves in it. There are fewer of us now than started at the station. There are more of us than there should be, which I credit to a lot of people making a lot of hard choices, and to a fire captain who kept a door open 30 seconds longer than was safe. Renata is 10 now. She's taller. She still packs her own bag every night without being asked. And every night, before she sleeps, she gets up and she walks our little corner of the fairgrounds shelter. And she touches the door of our room, and the flap of the med tent, and the gate to the yard, and she says sealed, and I say sealed back. And we do it for Talia, and now we do it for Dom too. She asked me once, a few months in the dark, "Dad, did Uncle Dom lock us out to be mean?" And I thought about the deadbolt, and the chain, and the word no said to himself in the dark, and the escape route mapped in his own handwriting. That wasn't. And the song he tried to sing through a locked door, and the last text, and the period. "No," I said. "He locked us out to keep us safe. Locking that door was the last thing he did as himself, and it was the bravest thing anybody did that whole night. He knew what he was becoming, and he made sure it couldn't get to you. He didn't lock us out, Nettie. He locked himself in." She was quiet a long time. Then she said, "Then why does it still feel bad?" And that's the part I couldn't fix, and didn't try to. "Because both things are true," I said. "He saved us, and we lost him. And doing the right thing didn't make it hurt any less. That's just how it works. The right thing and the easy thing almost never live in the same house." She fell asleep after that. I didn't. Not for a long time. I lay there, and I listened to the perimeter generators hum. That mindless competence of machines still working, while the people figured out how to keep being people. And it reminded me of the aerators at the water plant, running in an empty yard the day it all started. And I thought about my brother in Dad's recliner, and the house we grew up in, and the promise I made him. I never told her he was scared. I told her he was watching a movie that first week, when she was too raw for the truth. And then, when she was ready, I told her he was the bravest one. And that part was true. So it wasn't really breaking the promise. Sometimes, in the cold hour before dawn, when the shelter is quiet and my ankle aches the way it's ached since I landed wrong under that maple, I catch myself humming. Just the tune, a frog and a boat. And I stop myself, because there's nobody left to sing it back the way he did. But I keep the door sealed. Every night, I check the locks like Talia taught me and Dom died proving. And I understand now what she meant all those years ago, walking the house before bed. It was never really about keeping things out. It was about being the one who decides what your family is safe from for one more night, no matter what it costs you to be that person. My brother locked us out the night the infection reached town. I've spent 11 months learning that it was the same thing as letting us go. And I'd give anything to hear that deadbolt turn one more time from the inside, knowing he was still in there to turn it.